spend a lot of time, though, talking about what went wrong for Labor in all of this. Something went right for the coalition, because you can't overlook the fact that this was a huge achievement in this sense, that this country does not throw out first-term governments, and yet the coalition has gone very, very close to that. So what did they do right?
Well, they managed to somehow retail the message that Tony Abbott is a politician of conviction, whilst he was sort of quietly junking quite like a number of those convictions. That's the extraordinary thing about this campaign. And the other extraordinary thing is the discipline that Tony Abbott personally showed, to an extent I think that was unexpected either by his opponents or by his teammates, or even quite possibly by himself.
He campaigned very well, and going back to that idea of leadership and certainty, that mantra that we all mock is very certain, short sentences, full stops at the end. It's not an 80-page contract, as one of the people in the Liberal Party said to me yesterday. And although Tony Abbott is a mixed character, he is a certain character. And he has that authenticity that the word that they keep using with him is authenticity. Now, he might flip and he might flop, but you know what kind of character he is, and you get the sense that he's authentic.
Can I just add, though, just a caveat first, we're talking about Labor's campaign having failed and the Coalition's campaign having succeeded. But wait a minute, it's still dead heat, and the fact is, it must be set against the backdrop of the worst government possibly in terms of mismanagement since World War II. In a sense, you would think a sane country would have voted them out. So I'm not sure that we can just damn the Labor campaign as a failure.
I mean, I think one of the great failures of this campaign in the ALP, and I'm conscious that we're all jumping on and pointing out the failures. I think that this result is a failure for the federal government, but the extent to which this
campaign itself can't be written off as a complete disaster. I think there are elements that work better.
Well, but think about it this way, though. If Labor fails to return, they simply cannot put together a government, then since the war, only once will Labor have managed to stay in office for longer than 3 years. Maybe, Dennis, they're just not any good at it.
Well, they are if Bob Hawke's leading them, and
as Bob mentions every 3.5 seconds.
Last night he looked like he's still available. So,
but you mentioned Tony. I thought, in a sense, and I'm conscious that it's a comment that is open to ridicule and thoughts of exaggeration. I think what we've seen in Tony Abbott has been quite heroic. It has been a transformation in himself. I think he's grown into the leadership very consciously, knowing what his weaknesses are as a person, that need to confess, that sense of being not quite cut out for the job. And it's been remarkable. And what I think is one of the elements of that is what you first mocked, in fact, the people skills. His people skills have been extraordinary. To keep together a party that he won by a single vote only 8 months ago, to propose policies mocked by the Canberra commentariat, particularly on climate change, to drag it through, to topple the sitting Prime Minister, the most popular for years and years and years, and to drag them into this position, and to keep his calm despite the most ridiculing kind of coverage that I've ever seen from the media, has been extraordinary.
What, through this campaign?
I think so. And you know what happened? I think Labor faced with him while the Coalition faced with Rudd, that the more they mocked and the more he seemed impervious to it, the more he established
you would take his treatment in the media, though, ahead of Julia Gillard's through this campaign, surely, given and because of what occurred, because of what came up. I'm not suggesting the media were unfair to Julia Gillard. What I'm saying is that because of the leaks, then she had to deal with issues that were beyond her control in a way that Tony Abbott did not.
I think, too, that Julia Gillard deserves congratulations. She carried this campaign on her back. I think it would have been a whole lot worse with somebody else running this party. So she did a tremendous job. And I actually think we have two very substantial figures now who may be forming the next government. And given the opportunity, they might both surprise. I think that it's, if looking optimistically again, I think that they could both be very good prime ministers. And one thing about Tony Abbott, he's seen every step of his life as a vocation of some form or another. If he was given the job as Prime Minister, I'm sure you'd take it enormously seriously and you'd see a very different character.
And you've got to admire, for the way, Dennis, you just stayed on message about the way, stopping the boats.
Mm. Yeah, he had a very tight script and he stuck to it. He didn't deviate from it on one of the 36 days of the campaign. But there was one thing on which the coalition did fail, and it's amazing that they got to where they did because they failed on this, and that's the economic management. They went backwards in this campaign on the question of economic management, and they let the Labor Party get in front. It was an extraordinary effort by Labor to do a mix of selling their positive message of getting Australia through the global financial crisis while also portraying Tony Abbott and the coalition as a risk on the economy.
I'm not sure that message from the Labor campaign was as strong as it could have been. I think that the Labor Party vacated some ground, particularly through the course of their advertising campaign on that. I really thought they undercooked that element.
No, it was there, and it was as strong as they could make it. But it
Whilst
was
not mentioning Kevin.
But it was always drowned out by Kevin.
And I think the coalition is very lucky in some regards. Their first week was a disaster in terms of sheer organisation. They clearly didn't have the money for the ads. They saved them all up for that last week because
they spent about $12.5 million on ads compared to the government's 14.
ACTU, add the ACTU, add Get Up.
No, this was just the
No, but you have to add the total ad spend of the Labor forces.
You have to include the mining industry then too.
I think it was enormous. And also they had a big hole in week 4 where they had nothing to say. They went to sleep on education policy. They were under-rehearsed on broadband policy.
I was going to say, there was one last very late-breaking big mistake, and lucky the people of Lindsay didn't see it, but it was Tony Abbott ordering a shandy with light beer. Now, if the people of Lindsay had seen that 2 weeks earlier, his campaign would have been over.
But what he did do right at the last minute, he announced on the media bus, here he is.
People expect the candidate for the top job to be bloody keen. And, I mean, you know, why sleep at a time like this if there are voters to be seen?
So away he went, and was that because there was a kind of a perception out there that maybe he didn't want it enough?
Someone said to me very early in this campaign, is this guy serious? And I think he wanted to show people that he was serious and was prepared to do everything that was necessary to get the job.
Let's have a look at some of the pictures now of what he did do, of course, when he went out there. But it worked really well, didn't it, Dennis, in terms of the images that presented?
Yeah, it did. He managed to get... On the final night of TV news, he got a positive, action man. I'm willing to stay up all night to become Prime Minister image.
Myself, if necessary.
It was extraordinary and also a bit risky because we only recently had an experience of a sleep-deprived leader, and that didn't work very well.
I thought it worked well. The fish market pictures you're seeing now were brilliant.
It almost looked as if finally they had somebody to barrack for after a lacklustre campaign.
And you know what it also did? I think it tied in this idea of Mr. Action Man peddling, running, marathon, which was an object of ridicule, into, you could actually see a practical application. This bloke can also have the stamina to campaign.
The whole thing turned into a modern pentathlon by the end of it. You know. At the end of it, we should have demanded that he bake a quiche or something.
Leap over tall ballot boxes.
But I mean, that final series of images also showed him kind of getting out among a group of people who work at night who don't ordinarily get to see political candidates, and that's kind of an important visual as well, like this idea that you're reaching out to people who aren't normally part of the process.
And as I say, momentum is everything in politics, and it added that sense of momentum going into the last day.
Plus, a news poll was saying that the number of undecideds, the ones that would make their mind up in the shadow of the polling booth, was very, very high. So I thought, normally you might think the last 2 days it's all over, they've decided, but I thought those pictures came just at the right time.